Meet the blackberry, otherwise known as Rubus fruticosus aggregate. It's perfect for travelers who would rather see the actual beautiful sights rather than being stuck in the bathroom or in the woods. Welcome into today's Brainy Botany, where we are diving into the medicinal power of blackberry and not just the fruit. We will explore the leaves, the roots, traditional uses of the plant as a whole. We'll also talk about botanical characteristics and how it's been used in traditional and modern day medicine, and also what science says about it today. I'll mention some ways to use it practically, from teas to skincare, and I'll also share some growing tips or harvesting tips if you would like to bring this herb or fruit into your home. So let's first talk about the botanical and in general plant overview. So as I said, this is in the Rubus genus. It is known as the Rosaceae family, so it's actually in the same family or in the family of roses. The common species, as I said, are the Rubus fruticosus. There's also Rubus alleganiensis. There's Rubus occidentalis. So these are the three main kinds, but there may be some subvariations or subspecies. Perennial shrub, and it has biennial canes, so that means that the canes will, in the first year it's vegetative, and then in the second year it's fruiting and flowering and fruiting. So for me right now, actually in Minnesota, my blackberries are flowering and they will be fruiting. If you look at the stems, they are a little bit thicker and thorny, and they will trail down. Often they will kind of go up and then trail over, like a lamppost kind of. And they just really, like, compared to raspberries, the thorns are spread out across the stem, versus on raspberries they're much finer, more so like hairs, and they're all across the stem. The leaves are compound and they'll have like 3 to 5 leaflets, and they're serrated edges with an alternate arrangement. So this also can help you clarify. If you touch a blackberry leaf, the underside will actually feel a little bit soft compared to your raspberry leaves, which will be just more foily, I guess. And then as they are coming out right now, beautiful pinky or white flowers that will come out, and they're 5-petaled. They'll typically be in clusters along that beautiful stem that will hang over, and it can become very aggressive. Like, it's considered invasive. And I've already covered this in my previous videos. In my previous video on raspberries, we've talked about this, but the aggregate druplet, each little bubble is actually its own little mini fruit. They're not like seeds, they're called achenes. So it starts green, it goes to red, and then it will become black when it's extra ripe. And then for the root, it's a perennial root system, and it has a suckering habit of spreading, so it can definitely spread. My mom planted some years ago, and it has taken over the woods, like a lot. So we can kind of get the hint that the parts used are the leaves, the root, and then also the fruit. The flowers I haven't really seen utilized. I don't know, I don't think that they would be very aromatic. They wouldn't really have that delicious, like, fruity scent to it. I'm not familiar about blackberry flowers being used, but I mean, I'm not going to say that they can't be, but I'm also not going to say that they can be. The key constituents of blackberries are kind of similar to our raspberries. They have tannins, so they're astringent and toning to the tissues. When I think of tannins and astringency, I really think of like menstruation, diarrhea. If you have like digestive issues and you just feel loose, leaky, astringency is going to help to tighten that up. And with traveler's diarrhea, you know, like when you're traveling, you get stressed out, you get nervous, you kind of just get out here. Well, this berry can help you get back into here. It also contains flavonoids and anthocyanins, which are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. And they also contain vitamin C, K, and manganese. Another thing they contain is ellagic acid, which I've also mentioned before for strawberries. Definitely check out my previous berry brainy botany videos, because we've had a lot of fun learning about these regular everyday fruits you may see and you may eat without realizing the crazy medicinal power behind them. Alright, so let's move into historical and traditional uses of our beautiful blackberry. So in Western herbal medicine, blackberry has been used for that astringency, for like diarrhea, sore throats, and for wounds. It's also been used as like a digestive kind of a tonic. And decoctions made from the root bark were actually traditionally used for digestive problems and to tone the tissues. So we're seeing some kind of common themes here. And then in Appalachian folk medicine, blackberry leaf was used for menstrual cramping and also gastrointestinal issues. So there's another common theme there. And finally, some Native American groups like the Cherokees and the Iroquois utilized blackberry for treating inflammation and internal bleeding. So it's really been utilized for digestive issues, cramping, and gastrointestinal issues, and also for some wounds. So all of those traditional methods of using blackberry really point to the strong astringent and anti-inflammatory actions, especially due to those tannins. So I mentioned like anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, but I didn't really explain like why it is that. So let's talk more about like traditional and modern scientific research. This is just what studies and modern day research is kind of exploring behind this. So these are just kind of hypotheses, considerations, and things that you can go and look into yourself. I'm not making any claims or statements. I'm simply saying what the research is telling me. So back to those astringent actions, this can really help to tighten your uterine tissue, reducing heavy menstrual bleeding. Also, it is high in vitamin C, which supports iron absorption, and that's especially important for menstruating individuals. So you might have heard or seen that before your period, it's really good to make sure you're getting a lot of iron or meeting your iron needs, because we lose a lot of iron through the bleeding process. So replenishing that can be eating foods with iron, but it could also be maybe eating something with vitamin C to help with the bioavailability. I don't know if that's the right terminology in this sense, but to help with the absorption of that. And finally, back to the traditional methods, research is showing the digestive benefits. So tannins bind to the mucous membranes and reduce inflammation, which can be helpful in conditions like diarrhea, leaky gut, and IBS. And of course, another note, when clinical trials are limited, traditional use and lab studies support blackberry's medicinal profile. Alright, so let's finally talk on bringing blackberry into your home. You can either source ethically through like Mountain Rose Herbs, Star West Botanical. There's so many different like ethical and trustworthy sources that you can buy your herbs from, either in bulk or you can buy a smaller amount. Even locally, like I had no idea I had an herb shop right in my town, and it's been here for years. So even just looking locally, you might be able to find some, or even more locally in your backyard. Like I have blackberries growing all around me, so I can use the leaves for my own tea. A very simple recipe that you could try, but of course adjust it to your own liking and to what's best for you. You could use 1 teaspoon of the dried leaf per 1 cup of water, and you steep it for about 10 to 15 minutes, and it can be enjoyed hot or iced. This can support digestion and also menstrual comfort, or like I said before, traveler's diarrhea. For a culinary idea, you could make a blackberry chia jam. Try combining some fresh berries with chia seeds, lemon juice, and maybe a touch of maple syrup. Let it gel in the fridge, and then it's a fiber-rich, antioxidant-packed snack. Another way to use blackberries is for your skin. So astringency can be associated with menstruation and tightening tissues, also tightening your skin and just helping to, like, witch hazel is astringent, and a lot of times you'll think of that as like possibly drying, but it's also tightening. If you think of tightening, tightening is drying. So astringency, it's going to be a good toner. So you can make a skin toner by brewing a really strong blackberry leaf tea. Use it naturally for oily and inflamed skin, and you can optionally combine it with that witch hazel or a vinegar infusion. You could also pair blackberry with like nettle or oat straw or raspberry leaf in some kind of herbal infusions for like a full spectrum menstrual support blend. But of course, be educated on contraindications, any cautions, of course, any synergistic effects, anything that's going to happen by pairing those together. And now let's talk about harvesting and growing. So if you want to harvest blackberries, I have already been harvesting the leaves. It's kind of like early spring to late spring, maybe even early summer before they start flowering is when the leaves are best to gather. Because if you think about the energetics of it, all of the energy is going into the leaves before it's flowering because it's working towards the flower. But once it starts flowering, the energy is going towards the flower versus towards the leaves. So it's not going to be as fragrant, aromatic. It's just best to think of if it's flowering, it's probably best not to get the leaves. You still could get them, it's just they're not going to be as delightful and delicious as before. The berries can be harvested in the mid to late summer, depending on the location, of course. So if I walk across my yard, like one area, the blackberries are really flowering like crazy, and then another area, they're maybe still slow, they're working towards the flower. So depending on your area, it might take or leave some. And then you dry the leaves flat in the shade. You could use a dehydrator. I did utilize a dehydrator, and I didn't really notice much of a difference with that. You just want to take it really slow, obviously. Blackberries are really easy to grow, really easy, maybe a little too easy to grow, and they spread like crazy. So be very cautious about where you're planting them and maybe trim them back. Be mindful because of the spread. You just don't want to, maybe consider, you could grow it in a container and prune it regularly and it won't be an issue. Just don't let it aggressively spread so it's negatively affecting the rest of the plants on your property. And I just would say, if you're gonna go forage it somewhere, wear gloves because of the thorns, obviously, and then just avoid any like sprayed fields or areas. Okay, before we conclude, I'd just like to share with you guys some good resources to have, especially if you're from the same area in the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, even just in that general area. I feel like these books are really helpful if you're interested in foraging or even just interested in herbs. I would recommend checking out this Midwest Medicinal Plants book. This is super helpful, especially if you're interested in wild crafting and foraging. She has all kinds of herbs that grow wild here. I really like how she has it organized. She talks about contamination and ethical harvesting practices. And she even includes a harvest season by season guide, which I find super helpful. I'll just look in here and it's like mid to late spring, or also we're going into summer now probably. So I'll just look and, okay, I'm just gonna look here. I know I live in the woodlands, okay, and it's partial shade. Oh, you know what the very first one on here is? Blackberry. Then my next recommendation, this was actually recommended to me by my teacher. So this is The Edible and Medicinal Wild Plants of the Midwest. This is by Matthew Elfs, and I love this. This actually has wild strawberry in it, which I haven't found, like nobody's written on wild strawberry. I'm sure people have, I just haven't found it. So he has each of the plants. And then I really like that he has a conversion chart in here to check out, or it's a comparison for wild versus like domesticated. And he talks about American and holistic medicine and just really great stuff. And a field guide for descriptions and plant use. So if you're interested in like identifying and finding like edible plants, or you're from the Midwest, this is a really good resource to have. Just a quick disclaimer, I am an affiliate for these products. If you use the link in my description box, I will get a little bit of kickback to no extra charge to you, but no pressure. These are books that I actually use in my day-to-day life, so I'm just happy to share helpful resources. So now you know that blackberry is a deeply nourishing and often overlooked herb with a strong astringent, antioxidant, and cycle supporting properties, which this month I'm really focusing on cycle syncing videos and content. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then definitely don't forget to subscribe, help a girl out, and support my little small business. And don't forget that you are loved, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.